Welcome to Phenomenon Radio, the show that covers thought-provoking breakthroughs in the fields of UAP UFOs to discover fascinating truths, first-hand accounts, and investigative insights into the expanding confluence of physical and mental exposure to this worldwide phenomenon. Hosted by Emmy Award-winning investigative journalists, Earth Files reporter and editor, Linda Moulton Howe, and world-renowned experiencer of the 1980 Rendlesham Bentwaters incident, John Burroughs. And now, leading off tonight's program, here's Linda Moulton Howe.
In a 4.5-month period between August 8th and December 29th, 1980, 3 significant interactions with UFOs occurred in Albuquerque, New Mexico's Coyote Canyon, the RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge Air Force Base in England, and Houston, Texas. First, in Albuquerque on August 8, 1980, 3 security policemen assigned to Kirtland Air Force Base were on duty inside the Manzano weapons storage area in Coyote Canyon, a large restricted test range in the Manzano Mountains that run along the eastern edge of Albuquerque. The Coyote Canyon site was then classified HQ-CR-44, which means it contained nuclear weapons. It might still contain them today. The Coyote Canyon Manzano weapons storage area has been used by the Air Force Weapons Laboratory, Sandia Labs, the Defense Nuclear Agency, and the Department of Energy. On August 8, 1980, it was 10 minutes to midnight. All 3 security policemen watched a very bright light travel at great speed and suddenly stop in the air right above them. According to an official Kirtland Air Force Office of Special Investigations complaint, the 3 security policemen watched the light land in Coyote Canyon. Then, quote, sometime later, the 3 witnessed the light take off and leave, proceeding straight up at a high speed and disappear, close quote. The next night, on August 9th, 1980, 20 minutes after midnight, another guard from Sandia Security was driving on the Coyote Canyon access road to check an alarmed military building that contained HQ-CR-44 nuclear weapons. That's when he saw a bright light near the ground behind the building. He also saw another lighted object near the ground, which he drove toward and then could more clearly see, quote, a round disc-shaped object. He attempted to radio for a backup patrol, but his radio would not work. As he approached the object, on foot, armed with a shotgun, the object took off in a vertical direction at a high rate of speed. The guard was a former helicopter mechanic in the U.S. Army and stated the object he observed was not a helicopter, close quote. Then 2 weeks later, on August 22nd, 1980, 3 more security policemen assigned to Kirtland Air Force Base saw more bright aerial phenomena land in Coyote Canyon. The official Air Force Office of Special Investigations complaint states mysteriously, quote, they, the 3 security policemen, did not see the object take off, close quote. The source and evaluation of these events described in the official AS-OSI complaint form was Major Ernest Edwards, commander of the 1608th Security Police Squadron Manzano at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque. The AS-OSI official complaint form was written and signed by OSI Special Agent Richard C. Doty, who is our guest on Phenomenon Radio tonight. 2 months after the unidentified aerial phenomenon was interacting with the highly classified and restricted Coyote Canyon nuclear weapons facility, on the other side of the Northern Hemisphere in England in Christmas week of 1980, more unidentified lights were seen and investigated in Rendlesham Forest next to the joint UK and American RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge Air Force Base, which at the time was NATO's largest in Europe that had tactical nuclear weapons. After midnight on December 26, 1980, our Phenomena Radio co-host John Burroughs was an airman first class ordered to join Staff Sergeant Jim Peniston and Airman Ed Kvansak to investigate red, white, orange, and blue lights that were moving rapidly through the civilian Rendlesham Forest that bordered the airbase. Radio contact with Central Security Control faded in and out, so Airman Kvansak was asked to stay with their truck to receive whatever radio commands there were. Burroughs and Peniston tried to run after the rapidly moving lights in the dense forest. They kept falling down as they had to climb over large berms in the forest floor. The two men ended up in a dramatic encounter with a bright flash of white light. John does not know what happened to him, but Peniston remembered that out of the blast of white light emerged a 9-foot by 7-foot black triangular craft that had light underneath it. He did not see John Burroughs. Peniston said he walked around the craft, dragging his fingers on the black glassy surface until he touched raised symbols. As his fingers moved over the symbols, he says instantly, binary code of zeros and ones filled his mind. Central Security Control confirmed all contact was lost with the three men for 45 minutes. The rumor on the base afterward was that Airman First Class John Burroughs either jumped up on or was taken up by a UFO in Rendlesham Forest. A year after John Burroughs was engulfed in the mysterious light phenomenon at RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge, he was diagnosed with a heart murmur and an eye anomaly at age 20, which had not been seen during John's induction physical at Lackland Air Force Base, Texas in 1979. The lights, beams, and craft phenomenon returned the next night on December 27th, and then again on December 28th, when Deputy Base Commander Charles Halt took a dozen men into Rendlesham Forest to investigate with Geiger counters, cameras, and to record events on his tape recorder. John Burroughs was not on duty, but he felt compelled to return to the forest and ended up in a second encounter with red, orange, white, and blue lights that Buck Sergeant Adrian Bustinza said surrounded John as Bustinza was, quote, pushed to the ground by the lights, close quote. Then the next night, on December 29th, 1980, back in the United States on a rural 2-lane road about 35 miles northeast of Houston, 2 women and a boy driving home to Dayton, Texas, were stunned to see a large, bright, white, glowing diamond near the top of the trees along the road. It was about 9 p.m. Central Time. The bottom of the diamond craft was emitting flames and high heat, and in the back seat was Vicki Landrum with her 7-year-old grandson, Colby. Driving was her friend, Betty Cash. Landrum asked Cash to stop the car because she was afraid they would be burned up. After Betty pulled over to the side of the road, they both got out of the car, but the young boy became terrified, and Vicki returned to the back seat with him while Betty Cash continued to watch what she described as a dull, metallic, silver, diamond-shaped craft in the bright white light. Eventually, the diamond craft began to rise above the treetops, and 23 tandem rotor CH-47 Chinook helicopters showed up and surrounded the diamond in tight formation. Finally, after Betty Cash and the Landrums got to their homes in Dayton, all 3 experienced similar symptoms of nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, generalized weakness, a burning sensation in their eyes, and sunburned skin. Betty, who was outside the car the longest, even developed large, painful blisters on her skin. 5 days after the December 29th encounter with the diamond craft, Betty Cash was taken to a hospital emergency room because she could not walk. She had lost large patches of skin and clumps of her hair. A radiologist who later would examine the medical records of Cash and the Landrums for MUFON wrote, quote, "We have strong evidence that these patients have suffered secondary damage to ionizing radiation. It is also possible that there was an infrared component as well," close quote. Now, in 2017, we know from the 2006 unclassified UK eyes-only Condign report produced by Defense Intelligence 55 for the Ministry of Defense in 2000 about unidentified aerial phenomena, science, and technology, that UFOs, UAPs, emit high frequencies of terahertz radiation between microwaves and infrared, which can damage human tissues and manipulate human minds. John Burroughs has been trying for nearly 4 decades to find out what exactly happened in Rendlesham Forest. He nearly died in 2013 from heart failure and had to have emergency open heart surgery to replace his mitral valve. A doctor working for the CIA confirmed that the heart and probably eye damage were linked to John's exposure to terahertz radiation during his close encounters with the UAP UFO phenomenon in Rendlesham Forest on December 26th and December 28th, 1980, which were right before the December 29th Cash Landrum encounter in Texas. While recovering from the heart surgery in early 2014, John decided to file Freedom of Information requests for documents about the RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge phenomena. Later that year, he received confirmation that the UK Ministry of Defense had 18 highly classified documents that had not been released to the UK National Archives. After more FOIA inquiries and questions from Parliament about why the MOD was still, after 34 years, withholding documents about the RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge Rendlesham Forest phenomenon, the MOD said it would release the 18 documents. Finally, in June 2017, the MOD released 15 of the documents to the UK National Archive without making any digital copies available to the public. 3 of the highly classified policy files are still withheld. Anyone who wants to see what was released has to go physically to the National Archives in England to study the documents. It turns out that many still have lots of redacted sections that won't be freed from blackout for several more decades. One person did go to the UK National Archive physically to learn what can be read in the 15 partially released documents. He is Isaac Coy, a longtime UK UFO researcher. He found in his investigation of the 15 released MOD documents in June 2017 at the UK National Archive that one document classified secret UK Eyes A, capital A as in Apple, states, quote, Rendlesham Forest. In the early 1980s, a UAP landed outside of RAF Bentwaters in a forest, close quote. This means that the Ministry of Defense confirms that what was in the forest was an unidentified aerial phenomenon or UFO. Last month, on October 24th, 2017, John Burroughs was reading Isaac Coy's Facebook page when the following message popped in from the same Richard C. Doty, who prepared the September 1980 Kirtland Air Force Base AS-OSI complaint about the UFO intruding near the Coyote Canyon nuclear weapons facility. Rick Doty replied to an Isaac Coy thread about a UFO database with this surprising message. Quote, for example, regarding the Bentwaters incident in 1980, OSI initially stated they had no files regarding the incident. In fact, the public information officer for OSI stated that, quote, OSI did not investigate any incidents involving a UFO at Bentwaters Air Base, close quote. Doty continuing. But in 1994, Captain McAndrews at OSI stated the OSI report regarding the Bentwaters incident is properly classified, and Doty put 6 exclamation points after properly classified. Doty continues, I read the entire case file in 1984. The OSI report was over 150 pages and classified top secret code word, and he added 2 exclamation points. After this short break, retired OSI Special Agent Richard Doty joins Phenomenon Radio to share what he read in those 150 pages about the December 1980 Rendlesham Forest lights, beams, and craft, classified top secret, access only with code word.
You're locked in to Phenomenon Radio Live right here on KGRA DB. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's special guest, retired Air Force OSI officer Richard Doty, will join the show right after this brief message. Stay with us.
Every day, the men and women of the United States Marine Corps stand ready to defend the American way of life. The few, the proud, the Marines.
UFOcongress.com is where you go to check out the Guinness World Records largest UFO conference. The next event is going to be held February 14th through the 18th, 2018. At UFOcongress.com, you'll find out why so many people go to the UFO Congress. It's because we have the best speakers, the most amazing venue, and very affordable prices. Don't forget the website's UFOcongress.com. We look forward to seeing you at the next International UFO Congress.
Now you have the inside contact for alternative talk radio. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
Thanks for joining us tonight for Phenomenon Radio exclusively on KGRA every Thursday night at 8 p.m. We're ready to begin tonight's interview with our very special guest, retired Air Force OSI officer Richard Doty, to start tonight's interview, the grand return, at least for tonight. Here's John Burroughs. John, welcome back.
Thanks, Race. Rick, thanks for coming on the show to talk a little bit about maybe adding some information to what happened to the case.
You're very welcome. It's good to be on the show.
I want to start with something because I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there listening, and I want to start, instead of getting right into the report, I want you to lead up to what led you to read the report. At any point in time, were you involved at all with the Bentwaters case?
No, never.
Okay. So a lot of people out there will be saying then, okay, then if he wasn't involved, what led him to be able to look at the report in the first place? Can you explain that?
Yes. I was in headquarters, OSI, in 1984 in the Counterintelligence Directorate. And Colonel Law.
Rick, where was that?
Was that at Bowling Air Force Base.
Bowling, okay.
In Washington. And Colonel Law, who was the chief of counterintelligence directorate at the time, and I always got along quite well with him. He saw me. We talked about it, several other cases that we were involved with. But then he said to me, he said, Rick, I want you to come in and read a case file when you get done with this. And this was in the afternoon. And I said, okay, I'd be more than happy to, sir. And he said, and so when I went into the room to read it, he said, maybe this incident that had occurred at Kirtland is connected from some other incidents that happened around the world, especially the one in UK. And I said, okay. And that was the preamble he gave me which led me up to reading the case file.
Well, I've got a couple questions off of that. Now, when you looked at overall, like you said, counter intel, I shouldn't use disinformation, but counter intel. So the OSI was saying one thing publicly, but behind the scenes, you were looking more closely at what was taking place, correct?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And we did this for a reason, as Linda mentioned earlier, headquarters CR 44. We had a list of collection requirements that pertain to threats against the United States Air Force. And one of them is threats against nuclear weapons. And that's a very, very high priority for us to protect the nuclear weapons. And the collection requirement is for us to collect any information that poses a threat against nuclear weapons. Now, what's interesting in that CR 44 is the CR 44A, which is actually classified. It was classified at the time. And that called for us to investigate any threats from unknown persons or unknown objects that could threaten nuclear weapons.
Rick, that's what the capital A meant?
Yes.
Wow. And
yes.
That is the title of what Isaac Coy, that page that he was able to get at the National Archives, Secret UK Eyes A. And you're saying that is relating directly to something unknown, like a person or alien or machine.
Right. It didn't say alien, but it said unknown persons or unknown objects that could threaten a nuclear weapon or a nuclear weapon storage area.
Okay, so as you were talking about this, you said he wanted you to look at what happened at Kirkland and then what happened in the UK. Did he give you any idea why he thought they might be what may make them relate? There had to have been something that he read about both reports, because he obviously had already read the second report and he knew about your report, that he felt may tie the two cases together.
Well, what you don't know, and what probably hasn't ever been told, is that there were a number of other incidents on or near Air Force installations that have never been disclosed. I mean, I investigated several in New Mexico that's probably still classified. And there was a series of these across the United States, not just in New Mexico, but one near Nevada, Hill Air Force Base, Utah, Hill Air Force Base, one near Nellis Air Force Base, which is near Las Vegas, one near Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska. So there were other incidents that happened. And so this incident that happened in the UK, Bentwaters in 1980, all these could be a series of events involving something that maybe we knew about or maybe we didn't know. I'm sure Colonel Law knew a lot more than I did. I mean, he's a colonel and I was a special agent. But he wanted me to read it to see if that I could pick out some connections.
And what was the timeline for Hill Air Force Base, Nellis, Offutt, and RF Bentwaters?
Between 80 and I'd say 83, 84, 79 to 82. I don't know the exact time frame, but what I can remember, it's in about a 3-year period during that time period. Between about 79 and 83, I'd say.
Did the same thing happen? The lights and people chasing and somebody engulfed in lights, like what happened twice to John?
No, not necessarily that. There were encounters with some type of an object at a base or near a base or outside the base, either a security, police patrol, or some other Air Force personnel was involved. One occurred at Nellis when a plane was getting ready to take off. I believe it was an F-4 that was taken off, and his object landed right in front of the Air Force jet, preventing it from taking off. That's 79, I believe.
But what happened?
The plane couldn't take off, and security police went out to confront this object. And then it took off, and it landed down near Warm Springs, Nevada. Air Force helicopters went after it, tried to tried to identify it, and I think it ended up just taking off, and they never were able to make contact with it again.
Okay, so we're now you sat down, you opened up the file, okay, and why don't you take us through, because you obviously as an agent would start at the beginning, and as much as you can discuss, I would appreciate how the files are set up, what would be in them, and what you would be looking for, not only to identify with Kirkland, but the report itself. What started at the beginning, how the report was, who was in charge, what was going on, what led to OSI involvement. Go through the whole spiel step by step for the audience, if you would, please.
Okay, you're talking about the UK incident, right?
Yes, when you started looking at the UK file, yes.
Okay. The case file was classified top secret, had numerous caveats and code word. I can go into that a little bit later. I noticed numerous odd things about the case file. First, the file number was a headquarters generated file, which means that headquarters, OSI, requested the investigation. Normally, on a base, if an OSI report of investigation was going to be conducted, or any investigation, the commander of the base, either a base commander or a wing commander, would request an OSI investigation. And that would be the first paragraph of the report, is that the commander, Colonel so-and-so, base commander, would requested this investigation. But this particular case, the headquarters file number indicated that headquarters had requested this. And when I continued reading it, I realized that the case number matched the same case category that I did at Kirtland, which is a 93 case. The numbering system in OSI is the first two numbers is a year, such as 80. And then the next numbers is a district that the OSI investigation is conducted in, such as England would have been District 62. And then a letter D indicating a district. And then a case category. OSI had case categories from 1 all the way up to 500. And they meant something to an agent, such as a 6 case would be in a homicide investigation, a 27 case meant espionage investigation. A 93 case is a special investigative inquiry. That's a broad range of investigations that OSI can conduct to pinpoint down to another case that they could open, rather than just a general category case. And this was a 93 case. Normally, an OSI agent generates a case and is done at the request of the base commander, as I said. The first paragraph of this report, actually it would have been the second paragraph, said that this investigation was requested by the Secretary of the Air Force, Hans Mark. That threw me for a loop because I never saw that before. I never saw a request from the Secretary of the Air Force. I've seen headquarters requests for a particular investigation that was generated up there, but never by the Secretary of the Air Force. So that threw me, and I realized that this case was very, very, very important. Another thing about the case is that normally we have OSI had a particular type of case file that had slots in it. You open the case and the complaint form, the OSI complaint form would be the first file on the left, and then the report of investigations would be the second, and so on and so on. This had a blue jacket, which I'd never seen before, which had classification caveats all over it. And it was, I knew, let me go back a little bit. I knew the agent, looking at the name of the agent that generated for it, I knew of him. I'd worked with him before. Very, very sharp, very thorough agent. So this case file had, I would say, at least 150 pages with attachments. And then there's a separate folder that contains photographs. We call it a 1A serial. And that contains agent notes and all the photographs. And it was very, very thick, very, very thick. So, and after examining it, I decided that I would go ahead and delve into it because it seemed to be so fascinating to me. The file indicated there's a separate page that indicated interviews, the names and locations of people that were interviewed, and there were at least 50 names on that. I can't remember the exact number after all these years, but there was at least 50. Several witnesses were interviewed numerous times by OSI agents by an indicator showing that marks indicating that these people were interviewed several times, not just the initial time, with interview statements.
Can I stop there because I'll forget this as we go along. Okay. Did you see names of the witnesses that were interviewed? And if you did, can you reveal those names?
I saw the names. I don't remember every single name over the years, but I remember Colonel Halt was there, and Monroe, some Nevels or Nevins.
Nevels.
Okay. Pinkston, you, Colonel or General Williams, Colonel Zucker, or he was I believe
it was Major Ziegler. Major Ziegler was Spider Commander. Now, let me go. Let me step back on this when you're saying names now. These were people that were interviewed by OSI?
Yes.
Okay, so every name that you're naming right now were called in and interviewed by OSI.
Yes.
Okay.
As a report stated, yeah.
Okay, now when you say interviewed, does it go into what type of interviews and how they did them?
Yeah, each individual interview details what is involved in the interview, whether it's a witness interview, a subject interview, meaning you might be accused of something, whether there was rights involved, Article 31 rights advised. You understand that Article 31 rights is the same thing as Miranda rights.
Right.
And the location that they were interviewed, and who was present during the interview, and whether the interview was recorded by recorded audio and video.
Okay. Now, these interviews were all of them witness related. In other words, we were brought in as witnesses.
To the best of my knowledge, all of them were witness interviews, with exception of one interview of a person that they interviewed that was it had nothing to do with this particular case, but it had to do something regarding drugs. And I know you know about this. Let me regress a little bit. During the evening of December 27th, this report stated this. During the evening, I believe it was the evening, started in the early evening of December 27th, Air Force OSI had a surveillance operation conducted on Woodbridge regarding a possible delivery of narcotics to the base. And OSI agents were in a van parked near a barracks. They had a security police radio, and I believe there was a person that was a security police investigator that was also with them, and they were watching barracks for this narcotics load. And those same agents were interviewed later because they saw these same lights. It was either on the morning, I don't remember, it was morning of the 27th or morning of the 28th, whenever it was. I believe it was like a 12-hour surveillance.
Right.
So one of the people they arrested or they apprehended regarding the drug operations was interviewed and it was in the report. But really the only thing that they had to ask him was if he saw what they saw. That was really the only question they asked him.
Okay, now, where were these agents out of?
These agents were out of Lake and Heath.
Okay, so were they, and this is important because the show goes fast. Okay, the first two nights that already happened, according to what you remember, your memory says it was the night of, would have been the third night, the night Colonel Halt was out there. That's correct, right? Would have been the barrack surveillance and stuff?
Yes.
Okay. So OSI was already aware of the first two nights of incidents, correct?
Yes. There's a detailed paragraph in the report relating to, I'm thinking it was even before Christmas sometime. I don't remember the exact dates, but maybe 23rd or 22nd. There was something reported that the OSI was alerted to suspicious activity in the woods adjacent to Woodbridge.
Right. There was an incident on another flight ship prior to ours that I wasn't aware of till years later, that there was something going on in the woods. It was seen by, I believe it was, I don't know, it was a D or B flight. One of the other flights saw something prior to our first night when we went out there. Okay, so what happened? Did the OSI's guys break off? Did they get involved in the incident?
Yeah, they immediately broke off from that. There was some other the agents from Bentwaters. Because it wasn't actually OSI at Woodbridge, they were at Bentwaters they would cover Woodbridge, but these agents that saw this I guess they thought a helicopter had crashed. That was what it was indicated in the report, that they thought that there some helicopter because I believe there were helicopters at Woodbridge, and it crashed, and that's why they broke off. Okay.
Now, and we'll get back to some of the other stuff. Exactly what did the report say they saw, and what happened, what they saw besides seeing lights? Was there anything in there? Was there descriptions of what these agents saw, what their involvement was, and what went on?
Well, what I can remember is that they either they radioed or the security police investigator that was with him, or the security policeman was with him, notified the central the dispatcher, asking them if they knew anything about an aircraft that had crashed or helicopter that landed in the woods. Then I think from that point on, they got information that something was out there. So the OSI agents went to their command vehicle, which was all the report I remember saying some distance away. I don't remember how far away. And they coordinated with the agent in charge of the operations. And then they notified eventually Lakenheath of this incident. And those two agents never went out there, but the other agents from Bentwaters did.
Okay. Did it say what they saw or what their involvement was?
No, it didn't in this paragraph. That paragraph pertained, to the best of my knowledge, just to the fact that they saw it, and they saw lights, they saw security police going out there, and they thought, there was some kind of an aircraft crash. They of course found out later that it wasn't a helicopter that crashed.
Okay, so what you're saying, based on what you read in the report, they didn't get directly involved, but they did observe something taking place.
Yes, that's exactly true.
Okay. So is there anything else in the report prior to what the investigation led afterwards? And I want to go into that more in detail. Was there anything in the report that went into detail about what took place? Like what witnesses state? Oh, and I have to ask this because I have to ask this because I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but there's been people that said they were interrogated and there might have been sodium pentothal used. Was there anything in the report saying that took place?
No, but there was several hypnotic interviews that were done. OSI, one of their specialties is placing a person under hypnosis and then interviewing them. And there were several of those listed in here. I don't recall exactly the number, but I'd say probably between 7 and 10 of the hypnotic interviews that were done where the agent, the specialist. Yes.
John and I have both been told by more than one that there was chemicals used. Would that be possible independent of what that written report showed that you read?
Well, that could very well be. There could have been some other agency that did it, but I don't recall seeing anything about sodium pentothal in that OSI report. The only thing I saw in that report was hypnotic interviews, and there were several of them on people.
Okay. And it's important. Do you remember which witnesses had that done to them?
No, I don't. You know what? I don't remember the names. After all these years, there were so many different names in that report, so many different witness statements. There were reports on there's a separate folder that had all the interview statements, and some of the statements were done by MOD investigators. Some of them were done by the Suffolk
Police?
County Police. Yeah, and but I don't remember names. No, I can't say who. I don't want to say something that I'm not sure about.
I understand.
Yeah,
now, can you go into what when we kind of cut you off? What exactly were they using the hypnosis for? Did they use this to put stuff in people's memories, to forget stuff? Was it something like that, or was it just for them to go back and remember what they saw? And why would they use that? Why would they use that?
Well, some people, when they see or hear or encounter a traumatic experience, the mind doesn't want to release it. It's kind of stuck in the back of their mind. So in order to get it forward, and I've used it in investigations. I'm not a hypnotherapist or anything, but I've had agents come in and do this, where they would put someone under hypnosis, and then they ask them questions. It would be just a regular interview, but it would be under hypnosis, and they would be more forthcoming with their description of the events, of what happened. And that's why they do it. I don't, I'm not an expert in it, so I really can't comment any more than what I know about it, and that's all I know. I don't think there's any procedure, at least I've never read in OSI, where they would try to take something out of the person's mind.
Or would they try to implant something in their mind?
That may be possible, but I just don't know enough about it to comment. I don't know.
Okay. Now, the part I want to get into, and I want to get into the statements that you saw and who wrote them. Okay, how many there were, stuff like that. The people you mentioned that Colonel Halt was interviewed, General Williams was interviewed, my name was there, Peniston was there, Neville's was there. Do you remember any other names?
There were some civilians. I don't remember all of them, but I believe they were. I believe they were all British. I know the manager of the forest, or the caretaker of the forest, whatever you want to call him. He cooperated quite extensively with OSI. In fact, he showed. Well, we can get into that later, but he showed OSI agents when their forensics team got there where these anomalies were on the ground in the trees.
Okay, so you saw the map where they were, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
in fact, the photographs they took the crimes, well, the field collection photographs they call it, showed color pictures of where these anomalies were.
What did they look like to you?
They looked like somebody threw some kind of silly putty against a tree on one of them. The bark looked different than the other bark. One particular area had I'd say 4 to 6 inch patch of something on the tree, and there were several trees that had that marking. And then on one of the plants, the top, some kind of a plant that grows all year round there, the top part of the plant had that same substance on it. And this forest manager, whoever he was, showed OSI these things that I believe, based on what I remember in a report, that was missed by some of the other people.
What about on the ground?
Yeah, there were indentations in the ground, but what's interesting is the OSI and forensics team found 4 different locations where the indentations were, not just one, but there were 4 different ones, and they were at different areas. There were some of them some distance away. Again, this forest guy, this forest manager, pointed that out to the forensics team, because they were initially one of the statements by one of the forensics people said that they were isolated in one area because witnesses said it all happened in one particular area. But when they started checking and searching, they found that these indentations were at other locations, not just there by those trees.
And Rick, what did the indentation look like in terms of a shape?
Just looked like some kind of pole was stuck into the ground at an angle. I mean, I'm looking at a photograph now, remember? So that's what it looked like to me. And I didn't study them that carefully.
And what were the 4 different landing areas? Do you remember, and can you give us specifics where they were?
Well, they were I don't remember exactly, but one of them was like 100 and some, I think they were using meters. So one was 100 meters away, one was 75 meters away, something to that category. They were some distance away. So you figure 100 meters is what, about 400 feet.
Were any of them just outside the East Gate?
You know what? I don't know. I don't remember from the report if that was mentioned. And okay. I saw the map, but they had several different maps, some topographical and so forth. I don't remember. I didn't study them that carefully.
Okay. And I want to get back to the witnesses' interviews and stuff before we go down to another path. How quickly did they call everybody in that you listed earlier in and had them interviewed? And did each person have to do a witness statement? Did each person fill out an official statement on what took place, and were those kept?
You know, I don't remember the dates, but the top of the report, where it shows the date of the report, is the date that the agent writes it, and then there's an inclusive date of when the investigation took place. And I remember it was, I believe, from December 27th of 1980 to February, I think 24th or 27th of 1981. And then there was a supplemental, meaning that it was reopened, the case was reopened, and it was in August of 81 for 4 or 5 days.
Why did they open it?
That's the best I can tell you on the dates.
Why did they reopen it?
They reopened it because the analysis from the laboratories came back. It took some time, I guess, for the analysis to take place. And the results of the lab reports came back, and that's why it took.
What were the results?
The laboratory, I believe it was the. I don't recall. I know one place in there they talked about the Department of Agriculture laboratory, someplace, and I don't remember where it was, but they spoke about it. They analyzed plant, soil, and tree bark. And analysis showed that the strange marking that I was talking about on the tree bark had been mutated by some type of energy. So as the report said, the analysis said, the molecular structure of the bark was changed. And they don't know how it was done. One of the scientists or agriculture specialists said it might have been done by high energy or maybe a laser. Also, that the soil contained burnt soil, and it takes a lot to burn soil. But there were microscopic evidences that the soil was subjected to intense heat or energy, and the plant, which really sticks out of my mind. I'm kind of a plant guy myself. I like plants, and one of the things they talked about in this plant, they took 2 or 3 different plants. They analyzed these plants. They said that the top part of the plant, the photosynthesis receptors in those plants had been mutated. So this plant would mutate itself because of the photosynthesis. And I don't understand, I'm not a biologist or botanist, but that stuck in my mind. And I even tried to do some research years later on that. But the question still remains: is what caused it? They didn't have an explanation in that. They don't know what caused it.
Okay. Because we're getting ready to go to break in 2 minutes. Did you look at any of the witness statements? What they described they saw and what went on? Did you have access?
Yes, I did. I looked at. I read some. Some of them were very short. Some of them were. What we look at in OSI is what the person saw, what you saw, not what somebody told me. And there was a lot of, I start reading a paragraph and it starts talking about what somebody told them. Then I don't read anymore because it's not from them. It's from somebody else is telling them that. There are a few in there, especially Colonel Holt is probably was him and I believe the sergeant that was with him. They had very, very, very detailed detailed statements on what
stood out. What stood out about these statements? What did they describe seeing?
What they saw a triangular shaped object. They saw lights on the bottom that matched. Each one of them, interviewed them separately. They all described almost exactly the same object. They described the same lasers, or they say laser beams or light beams, although some of them described more than one, several, whereas some of them only described seeing one. And I remember the disaster preparedness sergeant that was there, who was, I believe, doing the radiation readings. He described, because he walked through some trees, he saw light balls, he said balls of light sitting on the ground, just sitting there. And when he started approaching, the balls of light shot up in the air, just above treetop, and then they disappeared. He was scared to death, and he had to run back to the other. He said, "Well, I wasn't armed. I didn't have any guns, and I was scared, and I don't know if these things were on the ground." But there were a couple, and I don't remember who. I don't remember the names, but there was a couple that discussed close encounters with aliens, and they described them. They said they got out of the craft. They walked around.
Well, let's hold it right there, because we've got to take our first break, and we'll come back and we'll go into that, what they said they saw, and if you can remember which night it was, and stuff like that. Race, take us to break, please.
Thank you, John. This 40-minute uninterrupted segment of Phenomenon Radio Live is brought to you exclusively by OnlineVibes.com, your personal connection to mind, body, and spirit, committed to connecting you with healing modalities that can manifest a true and healthy change in your life. Visit the website yourself at OnlineVibes.com. That's OnlineVibes with a Z.com. Tonight's very special guest, retired Air Force OSI officer Richard Doty, will rejoin the show for the second hour right after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Hi, it's AJ with Vibes, Mind, Body, Spirit. The Vibes Tribe seeks to assist you in creating and maintaining an uplifting and balanced state of being in your personal space. Palo Santo is a mystical tree that grows on the coast of South America. Palo is loved by many for its energetic cleansing and healing properties, and is also popularized for its heavenly presence in keeping your energy grounded and clear. Burning Palo provides an uplifting scent to raise your vibration and is also beneficial for relieving stress, anxiety, depression, and emotional pain. Palo Santo is also known for relieving symptoms of the common cold, headaches, and asthma. We offer Palo Santo in resin, powder, or by the stick. Go to onlinevibes.com for all of your vibration elevation needs and receive a free stick of Palo Santo with any online purchase over $25. Shop onlinevibes.com, that's onlinevibez.com, and get your vibes on today.
UFOcongress.com is where you go to check out the Guinness World Records largest UFO conference. The next event is going to be held February 14th through the 18th, 2018. At UFOcongress.com, you'll find out why so many people go to the UFO Congress. It's because we have the best speakers, the most amazing venue, and very affordable prices. Don't forget the website's UFOcongress.com. We look forward to seeing you at the next International UFO Congress.
As you know, recently we've been dealing with many natural disasters, and a lot of people have lost contact with their loved ones for days, even weeks. Others in the most vulnerable moments were unable to contact emergency services and call for help because of these potentially life-threatening circumstances from hurricanes, fires, earthquakes, and even rogue nations such as North Korea. Satellite Phone Store made satellite phones an affordable solution to being prepared when all communications are cut off. Satellite phones don't rely on cell phone towers, and they work anywhere under the open sky. Satellite Phone Store will give you a free Inmarsat iSat Phone 2 satellite phone with a monthly subscription on select service plans with enough time to provide you with reliable communications between your family and emergency services when you need it the most. To learn more, call 877-705-8839 or go to satellitephonestore.com. Supplies are limited, so call today, 877-705-8839 to hear all options and stay prepared.
For the thousands of wounded warriors returning from battle, Wounded Warrior Project has developed the Warriors to Work program, a career counseling service that helps wounded warriors translate their military experience to a civilian job. These extraordinary men and women bring more than just teamwork and inspiration to the workplace. They bring proven world-class job skills. And to ensure proper placement, Wounded Warrior Project works with employers to find just the right job fit. Talented, skilled, and eager to get back to work, you have the opportunity to hire a seasoned veteran. Contact Wounded Warrior Project at findwwp.org. Welcome home, the brave.
For years, our listeners connect to the KGRA on various platforms like TalkStream Live, TuneIn, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and many more. Now, you can stream your favorite paranormal talk radio shows with our new fully integrated custom KGRA mobile apps for Android and iPhones. Listen to your favorite paranormal talk shows from any mobile device 24/7, free with smartphone or tablet. Utilize custom features to access news, show pages, archives, contests, events, and live interactive chat rooms. Set show notification alerts and never miss your favorite live programs. All free and available to download in Google Play or the iTunes App Store. Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRAradio.com.
You're listening to Phenomenon Radio live right here on KGRA-DB, the Global Radio Alliance, Van Buren, Arkansas, Salt Lake City, Utah. We are all set for hour 2 of tonight's interview with Richard Doty on Phenomenon Radio Live, and we are going to forego the second hour stop set in this section as well as the news here in order to get to the huge volume of information Rick is willing to share with our listeners tonight. So let's get back to the interview. Here's John Burroughs. John?
Rick, as we were going to the break, you were starting to describe some of the witness statements and what you read, and you made it perfectly clear you were looking at direct statements of what witnesses described, and you scanned over what somebody told, was saying they heard. So can you go a little bit into the statements? And I believe you said at least a couple of witnesses described maybe seeing aliens. And if you do remember who either one of these witnesses are, could you mention their names?
And details about the aliens.
Okay. What I can remember is that there were at least 2 and maybe 3 statements in the OSI reports that detailed these individuals coming in contact with the creatures that were about, and in the report I remember that it was all in meters, it was a metric, and I don't know why. Normally an OSI report wouldn't say that. Anyways, it said between 1.5 meters high. They had gray, tight-fitting suits on. Each of them had some kind of thick gloves or thick appendagers. They never made any sounds. They couldn't. The one witness has tried to speak to them. They didn't speak back. They didn't seem to be afraid. The witnesses was more afraid of them than they were. And then they went back into the around the craft or left, or either the witness left the proximity of the aliens. But and I believe a couple of those hypnotic interviews I was talking about earlier pertain to these 2 people that had actual direct contact with these extraterrestrials. I don't remember names in the report. I was more interested in the contents of statements and not the names. The names all blend in together. But that's what I remember in a report regarding these creatures. That these I believe all of them that the 2 or 3 that saw these creatures were Air Force people.
Okay, but it didn't say which night, and you don't remember who the people were that said they saw them.
No, I don't remember the nights. I'm not sure it said it in the statement, but I don't. I was more concerned, more interested in the content rather than the dates.
Okay, now I want to ask you something. What was the response of the agents investigating and the fall action report that was done based off of that to that part of it? Did they believe there was some kind of intelligence life out there? Did they support it? Did they feel that there was something wrong with that? What was that part of it? Because it's important, because there's a lot of people out there that, that are in the UFO world that, believe we're not alone, that that we've had contact. There's been quite a bit of conversation about there might have been some kind of alien interaction out there. Did the report talk anything about what they felt about these witnesses, what they said, and what the outcome of it was?
Yes. And OSI has a standard policy that each witness to a crime is evaluated, the credibility of the person, and then the credibility of the information. And we use a scale, a A to F scale and a 1 to 6 scale. A1 meaning the credibility of the person is outstanding, and the information, number 1, is brilliant. And so each person, each witness was categorized by whether their credibility was good or bad. And most of the time, without a lot of information, the agent just has what that person stated and any corroborating information that was obtained by somebody else. And these witnesses were up the B1, the B3, meaning that they were really credible, and the information was credible, and the agents actually believed what they were saying, especially after the hypnotic interview where they said the same thing or said verified that. The agents then realized that this information is really, really good or really credible.
Did that fall under the witnesses that said they thought they saw aliens?
Yes.
John and Rick, I would like to share from a document that I reprinted on page 109 of my Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness. And I had received several different documents in the end of the 80s that related to RAF Bentwaters. One of them has the Lions as a crest, Ministry of Defense, main building, Whitehall, London. telephone number partially blacked out. The addressee is blacked out. The deer name is blacked out. And anybody who is listening can see this on page 109 of Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 2, High Strangeness. And it begins saying, as you know, OSI has completed a report on the landing of a craft of unknown origin crewed by several entities near RAF Bentwaters on the night of, and here has always been a puzzle. This is the date in this document, December 29th to 30th, 1980. I don't know why that is off from the 26th to the 28th. Maybe you can address this in just a moment. Interestingly, OSI reports that the entities were approximately 1.5 meters tall. That is equivalent to 4.5 feet approximately. They wore what appeared to be nylon-coated pressure suits, but no helmets. Conditions on the night were misty, giving the appearance that the entities were hovering above ground level. Another witness had told me back in around 84 to 85 that they had seen gray beings about this size floating approximately 3 feet in the air at one of the locations at RAF Bentwaters. Then it says, tape recordings were made on which the entities are heard to speak in an electronically synthesized version of English with a strong American accent. Similar transmissions were intercepted irregularly by the National Security Agency since 1975. See attached flag A. According to OSI, entities had claw-like hands with 3 digits and an opposable thumb. That's a total of 4. Despite original reports in flags B through G, OSI said the craft was not damaged, but landed deliberately as part of a series of visits to SAC bases in USA and Europe. Reports that the craft was repaired by U.S. servicemen or was taken onto the base are not confirmed by OSI. Landing is not considered a defense issue in view of the overt peaceful nature of the contact, but investigations by DS8, capital D as in dog, S as in Sam, 8, are to be continued on, and then the name of the person giving this request is blacked out, continued on blacked out's authority. Precautionary plan for counter information at a local level involving blacked out, and a blacked out is strongly recommended. So here seems to echo what you are talking about in terms of the types of beings. And did you read anything about what kind of DS8 counterintelligence they would have used to counter the facts that they're describing in this document?
No, in fact, MOD had a rather large, thick attachment to that report. And I remember brushing through it, but I didn't really read it or study it. So I can't say what the MOD, I was more concerned about what the OSI had. I don't remember reading anything about claw-like hands with 3 digits. I think I would have probably remembered that, but
what about the photos, Rick? You saw photos.
Yeah, but the photos was after the facts. All the photos pertain to the forensics investigation. It was after the facts. There wasn't actually any photos of anybody that took. I don't remember ever seeing any photos of an alien or anything like that.
Did you see any photos of what we encountered? Were there any photos or movie film, or was there mention that there was movie film of what we encountered?
Yes, there was. There was a master sergeant. I don't remember his name. I believe he was a flight commander, flight chief, whatever you call him.
Ball.
Robert Ball.
Robert Ball. He had taken a 8mm. I believe it was 8mm, whatever they 8 or 11 or 16, whatever they had back then. He took that and a film. I think it was one was 8 minutes, one was 11 minutes, and one was, I think, 17 or 18 minutes. And that was in there, but I would have had to, find a projector to review it. They didn't have anything in there.
So there really was. So the fact of the matter is, because that's always been said, it wasn't the case. There was. Sergeant Ball had a camera out there, and he actually shot some video of what we encountered.
Yeah. They said that in a report. He said, I don't remember the name, but I remember the master sergeant saying he had, and he turned it over to, I think Ziegler, I think it was him or a lieutenant, lieutenant. Anyways,
lieutenant, it would have been the Lieutenant England was actually the lieutenant that was out there with Colonel Halt that night. Do you remember his name?
No, I remember is that he turned it over to one of his supervisors, and
okay,
I don't know if it was a lieutenant or the major.
Let me ask a question here, because we're talking about December 27th, and we have other witnesses that we have interviewed who were at the East Gate who say that Robert Ball was with Bonnie Tamplin, who was the D shift flight leader that night, but that something very dramatic happened in the forest. A gun was lost after it was pulled, perhaps. Robert Ball's name was screamed, and 2 people heard this at the East Gate on December 27th. Bonnie Tamplin, who was the D shift flight leader, she ended up crying and screaming, and people heard this on a radio. And then she was never seen again. Do you remember reading anything about this with Robert Ball, Bonnie Tamplin, and D Flight on the night of December 27th?
No, I don't. I would have remembered that. No, I didn't hear anything about that.
Question: and any time in the reports that you read, did they talk about us being looked at medically? And if they did, were there any injuries to us that were identified?
I believe there was a paragraph in the report that said that the commander, or I'm not sure if it was a base commander or who, directed that these people be examined at the base hospital. That I believe that's the only thing I can remember in the report mentioning anything about medical, that they were instructed to go to the base, I believe Bentwaters or wherever the hospital was for examination. But that's the only thing I can remember regarding medical.
Right. Now, this is where it's going to get interesting, I think, because there's probably a lot of people that are listening that want to know. You named some names of people that were brought in. You named Colonel Hall, myself, Peniston, Nevels, Ball. Was Larry Warren's name mentioned anywhere in the reports? Was he involved in this incident whatsoever?
His name was mentioned in the report, yes.
Can you go into detail what was?
All I can say is that there were some negative things mentioned in the report about him a number of different times, but it was I believe the consensus was the matter was going to be turned over to the commander of the security police squadron for any action.
Did he write a statement? Did he do anything illegal or anything like that?
He wrote a statement. I believe he wrote a statement, and I believe that some of the information in that statement was found to be not correct. I'll leave it at that, because I didn't study his statement other than what OSI agents mentioned about him. It would be, and you know what's possible, that there could have been another case generated if somebody committed perjury, then they would have generated another report. An OSI report pertaining to the perjury. And that might have happened, and I don't know anything about whether it did or not.
Rick, okay. Because you and John are talking about anybody who might have been injured in some way and examined at a hospital, in the report, the 150-page plus report that you saw at Bolling Air Force Base, did you see the word terahertz anytime?
Yes. There was a whole section of the report that dealt with a technical collection. They call it technical collection of radiation readings, stray radio signals, and things like that. And I remember terahertz mentioned in there, along with Roentgens and other symbols. But I don't, or measurements. But I don't remember. I didn't study that. I didn't read it that carefully because I'm not a technical person as far as technical electronic specialist or anything. So I didn't study that very carefully. But I remember it mentioned that in the report.
And that was 1984 January.
Yes.
You were reading the report. So that means that terahertz was being discussed in that AS-OSI report in January 1984.
Yes.
Now, when they discussed this, and I know you're not a technical guy, did they feel this radiation? How did they feel this related to what happened to us?
Well, I believe the consensus was that the everybody out there was exposed to some type of radiation, but they weren't sure. I believe there was one particular paragraph, and think that was information or witness that came from disaster preparedness. He said that the radiation could be some unknown type of radiation, not the alpha, beta, gamma. It could be something else, and I think that's what the concern for the health of the people out there were.
All right. When the forensic team came in, you said afterwards, where did they come from, and did they look into the radiation stuff?
Yeah, they came from the forensics, the regional forensics examiner, one from Lakenheath, and some came from Germany at Wiesbaden, District 70. And they did a very, very thorough examination of the entire area. They gathered the evidence from the tree bark and the plants, and they're the ones that gathered it. And they also there was some vehicle. There was two. I remember two vehicles that were taken or examined, and their tires were taken. And I don't, I remember them mentioning that the tires were taken off for examination, but I don't recall in the report whether they were ever examined or not.
Okay. Now, how big of a team was it, and were they using helicopters to do part of this? Well,
they had to, because some of the photographs were aerial views of their investigation, or their section of the report detailed an area photograph, and so they had to have used I believe a helicopter to take those photographs.
Did they bring anybody in from Langley for this?
Not to my knowledge. I know I've saw all over the internet about DIA and CIA doctors, and now there's nothing in the report mentioning CIA. But let me tell you something about CIA. I've worked with CIA in Europe and Germany. In fact, you can get a hold of Kit Green. I'm sure everybody knows Kit Green. Him and he was a CIA operative in Germany, and I was OSI. We worked together in a team, a green team, we called it. And CIA personnel were always under the cover of something, either OSI, Army Intelligence, State Department. They never identified themselves as CIA. So I found it very peculiar that some people claim that the CIA doctors were there and CIA personnel were investigating. It's not unusual, I should say, for people to confuse the alphabet soup of the intelligence world.
Can I add something? Can I add something to that, though?
Sure.
Okay, because I talked a little bit about it when it came up, and okay, it makes sense what you're saying, that they would be there undercover as something else, right? The pictures and the way this came up was that Colonel Halt is now running around saying that there was a CIA doctor in a white lab coat. A witness came forward and said that they saw us. They came out and picked us up and took us, and we were medically examined as the incident was winding down each night. There was a group of 4 people based off the description of this witness, because I was trying to put stuff together. The description this witness gave matched the picture a person that I was close to, a person that I knew possibly could be them. I gave this particular person a picture of 4 people, and they identified this particular person. It went to another person who said this person was involved in the interviews afterwards. So you're right.
From the CIA.
Well, that's what Halt said. Okay. I'm just trying to clarify this so people understand. These people did not know who he was. They did not identify this person as CIA or anything. They just identified this person as being involved in the incident. Do you understand where I'm coming from, Rick?
Yeah, sure, I sure do. And like I said, I wasn't there, and I don't know what other agencies might have been there. There could very well have been NSA, and I would bet, I don't know for a fact, but I would bet NSA was there. The only mention in the report I distinctly remember was OSI agents obtained copies of the control tower radar tapes. And the tapes, according to the report, were transferred to Fort Meade, Maryland. It didn't say NSA Fort Meade, Maryland, but it said that the radar tapes were sent for analysis to Fort Meade. Well, we know what's at Fort Meade, NSA.
Yeah. And John and Rick, John, what was it, 2010 or 11, that we were in Washington, D.C. at the National Press Club and met with Colonel Charles Halt. And at that night, with sitting 3 feet from John and me, Colonel Halt said that the National Security Agency took over the investigation of the RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge phenomena case within 24 hours of December 26, 1980. He said that.
That's that very well could be. I just know, and I don't have any knowledge to or anything to refute that. I just know what the real report said, and it didn't. Normally, the OSI report would do a referral. Now, if we did an investigation and we find out at the end that, we don't have jurisdiction here, the FBI has, or some other agency, we would refer our case to them. And that happened during the Benowitz case a long time ago. Of course, that's a different show, but and it's very possible NSA was involved in this, and OSI and NSA doesn't always get along. And I can see there's a possibility that NSA was there in some respect. But I do know that some of the pictures that I saw of the crime scene team or the forensics team, they had white coveralls on. They had white booties and white coveralls and a white jacket. And when I saw that on the internet about white coats, I thought, well, OSI had these on at the scene, and maybe that's what they saw. But
the actual witness said that this individual was in a white coat when they were examining us after the incident took place. And like I said, I want to make it clear to the listeners. None of them identified them as this individual as alphabet soup. They just picked this particular person out of a picture that was there and involved in the actual interview, the aftermath of the incident. They were not in the field during the incident. They were involved in the investigation afterwards. Colonel Halt's the one that stepped forward now and says he knows who he is. He knows that he's CIA, and he knows, but he won't give the name. So what I want to go back to that stuck out to me, and you emphasized it, and we didn't hit it right away. Why did the Secretary of the Air Force order this?
I have no idea.
What was his involvement?
That's way above my pay grade. I have no idea.
There was nothing in the report saying why this was Secretary of Air Force generated.
No, it said that this investigation was conducted at the request of the Secretary of the Air Force, Mr. Hans Mark, or Dr. I believe it was Dr. Hans Mark in the report.
Now, did it talk about how he came in? Did it talk about how he came in? Why the investigation was going on?
Who came in?
The Secretary of the Air Force came to Bentwaters in January.
He visited the base right. Apparently, he was briefed, although the report didn't mention that. It just said that he was. Yes, go ahead.
Is it from what you know in terms of pecking orders, if the National Security Agency did take it over within 24 hours because it was extraterrestrial biological entities, advanced technology, and that NSA has some kind of policy pecking order over the CIA and all other military branches, except that that might have provoked the Secretary of the Air Force to get involved if the NSA took over?
Well, that's very possible, but let me digress a little bit. The report was very, very detailed about one particular incident with General Williams.
General Williams, yes.
Okay. During the investigation, the case agent noted that the wing commander, when he interviewed the wing commander, demanded that OSI agents provide him with a complete report, debriefing before leaving the base. In fact, the case agent noted the wing commander tried to interfere with the investigation twice. He tried to stop it. He tried to order the OSI agents off the base. And he even refused to provide names of witnesses that he personally interviewed.
Wow.
He refused to allow OSI agents access to some classified files regarding the incident made by the base intelligence officer. So OSI bypassed the wing commander and obtained an order from the numbered Air Force commander to seize the requested items. The wing commander then eventually cooperated with OSI, but insisted there was just some kind of a mix-up, and the wing commander kept kept stating to the OSI agents that he thought this was all a hoax. So Williams never cooperated, and he was somehow under the impression it was a hoax and that he didn't want, although the base intelligence officer, there was an interview of him, and he provided some documents that he had obtained from a person that he had interviewed in the town of Ipswich, and that person told the base intelligence officer that he had taken photographs of this object. Well, when OSI found out about that, OSI chased down this man from Ipswich with the assistance of the local, the county police, and he was interviewed by OSI with assistance of, I believe, MOD too. And then the man claimed that he had taken pictures on the evening of December 26th when this thing was flying over Ipswich. And I don't, right now I don't know where Ipswich is in relationship to where this happened. So whether it's north, south, east, or west. But anyways, he said that his house, this object flew north, I believe he said northwest or maybe northeast. And the OSI then asked the man for the photographs. Well, the man said that other agents, American agents, came and got the photographs. And OSI said, well, did they show him these credentials? And the OSI agent showed the credentials. He said, well, there was something, I didn't really read them, but they came and interviewed me and they took my photographs and they said it would bring him back. So who was that person? Was it the base intelligence officer? Did General Williams, does he have these photographs? Did NSA get them? It was never explained in the report, that's the best of my knowledge.
Well, here's something that's interesting that you said based on my background with the military, and maybe you can clarify this. Wing intel, would not normally be the lead in an investigations. It would be immediately SPI would be brought in, followed by OSI, depending on the severity of the case and what was going on. Because the way you described it was Lakenheath, and you was there and they saw some of this, but it sounds like the general, according to you, didn't have OSI get into the middle of it right away. And if he did, that's something that normally doesn't happen. But one other thing I think maybe you can, because I'm not counter intel or I didn't work in that area, but I did deploy quite a bit and get involved with these agencies. OSI would handle and do their reports. NSA would be more involved with communications, radars and stuff. And it could be a joint investigation, and each would submit a report, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's absolutely correct. And that's exactly what happened at Kirtland when during the Benowitz incident, when Benowitz was tapping in, unknown to Paul, into NSA communications, and NSA opened up an investigation. They did a report. I worked hand in hand with NSA. They shared what they wanted to with us, and we shared what we wanted to with them. But they're normally involved in signal intelligence, electronic intelligence, phone tapping overseas. NSA did all our tapping of phones overseas. We had a local NSA operative who we would go to and submit a request, and they would go out and tap some phones.
Wing Intel would tie more into DIA, correct?
Yes. Yeah, Wing Intel would coordinate with DIA. You're right, absolutely right. Yeah, and I find it very difficult to believe that a wing commander, and I've had trouble with commanders during my career, didn't want something bad to happen or didn't want us to report something bad. But I actually think that Weems knew more, and he was scared. He didn't want to report it. But to the best of my knowledge, at least in the report, there was no mention that he requested an investigation. Now, okay. I'm sure there was a base commander, and I don't know who the base commander.
Oh, that would have been Colonel Conrad. Now, question. In this report, was the State Department brought into this?
There was no mention of that I can remember.
Okay. The reason why I ask is because I did a FOIA at the State Department. They admitted they were involved. And normally, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be speaking, but this is what I've been informed by OSI guys that I worked with in the field when I was deployed in the Middle East. Department of State is always involved in an international incident, correct?
That's a good point. That's an excellent point, John. For instance, in Germany, if I didn't run any criminal investigations, but if there was a criminal investigation involving an American against a German national, the State Department would absolutely be notified.
Okay.
Yes.
Was this considered an international incident because it was off base? It was American personnel. There was British personnel. It was a joint investigations, correct? With the British police, the MOD, DS8, and OSI. Was this considered an international incident?
Because Rendlesham Forest was civilian ground.
Right. Yeah, and mentioned that in the report a number of times. In fact, they had a whole paragraph about the geological location of this, and that the OSI had to get permission from whoever owned the forest, and that it was a non-Air Force property, and it was not British. I think they even coordinated with the commander or the assistant commander of the base was British or something. There was something mentioned about him. But yeah, it thoroughly mentioned that in the report about the fact that Randlesheim was not U.S. property.
Okay, question now, Rick. This is where we're getting shorter on time, and I want. There's been declassified documents now, so I'm not asking you, or I'm not trying to go into national security. But at the time these incidents took place, okay, not only the Bentwaters case, but then the Kirkland and everything else, the Russians were trying to do, how's the way I want to word this so I don't cause any trouble? They were actually trying to penetrate nuclear security with EM technology. Okay, they were trying to test security on nuclear bases and how personnel would react, and it was both stateside and overseas. In our case, overseas would mean that they had woodpecker and some of that stuff available to them. At any point in this report, or Kirkland, and did Kirkland and Bentwaters, after you review both report, actually you're involved in the one and review Bentwaters, did they have some similarities and tie into each other? But was there ever a mention of technology, being involved possibly by a foreign nation?
Yes, yeah. In the Kirtland case, we thoroughly vetted that, the fact that it could have been a foreign government, the Russians doing it, or in a lesser role, maybe the Chinese, but we ruled it out based on the technological advancements, or the lack of, in the Soviet Union. We had a pretty good idea what the Soviets were doing and what their technology was. And when I went to Europe, I was thoroughly briefed on some programs which are probably so classified, I don't want to go into it, but pertaining to how what technologies that the Soviets would be using to spy on nuclear weapon storage areas or military bases. And back in '75, the Air Force did a really after the incidents where UFOs were observed over military bases, SAC bases, primarily SAC bases. The Air Force did a very thorough, very, very highly secretive operation, and they concluded that it could not have possibly been the Soviets. In this report that I read, there was some mention about checking with this British and American NSA station there in I can't remember what they called it, in England, about regarding whether there was any kind of chance that Soviet communications could have been involved or intercepted. And to the best of my knowledge, there wasn't.
Okay. So basically, Bentwaters, I'm just going down a list now. It was definitely ruled out the Russians weren't influencing the incident whatsoever, correct?
Yes, it was ruled out.
Okay. Was there anything we were doing? Because there was a lot of technology being tested and worked on right outside the gate and down at Marlstrom Heath, our Bowsy, the Nest, and all that other stuff. Was there anything that we were doing that could have created some of these effects, including plasma and technology working on that, SRI, as far as the lasers and stuff? Was there anything mentioned in that it could have been something we were doing, or we provoked something while we were working on that kind of technology?
Yes, there was a mention in the report about they asked for a lead to be sent out. A lead is a request for investigation at some other location. They requested that personnel from the Air Force Operational Test Evaluation Center at Kirtland be interviewed regarding whether there was any Air Force operational testing occurring in the area at the time. And Air Force Operational Test Evaluation said no. Affletech said no, absolutely not. We had nothing. They shut down all their operations, all their testing between December and February or something to that effect.
Okay. Now
that's Air Force.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. Based off of Kirtland, and you were asked to review Bentwaters, what were the similarities and how could they have tied in together?
Well, the similarities is there's a lot of things about the Kirtland incident, the radiation readings out at Coyote Canyon that was in my report that nobody seems to be able to get, the detailed report that I did. We had analysis done. We had some soil tested. We had actually a piece of the concrete bunker that the Sandia security guard observed the object flying over. We had that taken, cut off a piece and analyzed. It was Sandia Labs that actually analyzed it for us. And somehow the energy changed some kind of structure of the concrete. And that the ground around it had a burnt mark that they examined. And I don't recall exactly what they found, but it was some kind of high intensity heat or energy, either heat or energy, that would have caused it. So those are similar to the Bentwaters as far as this object. The shape of the object is different between Kirtland, but if you take into consideration the security police witness from Manzano, the security police guard in Manzano, one of them stated that it was a triangle shape. He clearly, in fact, he drew it on a little clipboard that he had in the vehicle. He was on patrol around the nuclear weapon storage area, and he showed me that later, and it was a triangle-shaped object. So there are some similarities. The object that landed at Nellis was triangle-shaped. So there are some similarities.
And there is a very important other document 1 week after the August 8th event with the security guards and what kept happening. On August 13th, Kirtland Air Force Base, complaint, OSI, possible hostile intelligence intercept incident frequency jamming. And this is going into the fact that the officers reported radar approach control equipment and scanner radar inoperative due to high frequency jamming from an unknown cause. Total blackout of entire radar approach system to include Albuquerque Airport was in effect between 1630 and 22:15 hours. That's a total of 5 hours and 45 minutes that this report says that there was total jamming of everything related to air traffic in Albuquerque, and that the Defense Nuclear Agency radio frequency monitors determined that the interference was being sent from an area of 90 degrees vector or due east from Coyote Canyon. And they have a conclusion that says the presence of hostile intelligence jamming cannot be ruled out. Communication maintenance specialists cannot explain how such interference could cause the radar equipment to become totally inoperative. Neither could they suggest the type or range of the interference signal. DNA's frequency monitors reported the interference beam was widespread and of a type unknown to their electronic equipment. And that was only a week after Coyote Canyon.
Right. Yes, I remember I didn't actually, there was another group of agents that investigated that, but I was involved in that. And we actually thought it was coming from something Sandia Labs was generating, and they didn't realize what they were doing, but then we ruled that out. And then we thought, well, maybe there were spies out there trying to mess things up. And I don't know if anybody actually ever figured that out or not.
No, there has never been any resolve. And this was HQCR 44 and 51 affected.
Yeah.
Rick, I got to go back to the witnesses one more time, okay?
Okay.
And then I want to ask you, there's been some questions coming up in the chat room about nuclear interference, okay? But at any time in the report, based on the witness interviews, did they feel there was any type of interaction by any of the witnesses with something intelligence, and what we saw and what was going on was under intelligent control?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of witnesses. The ones that they did hypnotic interviews on, they had face-to-face with these alleged ETs. They felt that there was something occurring that, that they didn't understand. And I believe one in there mentioned that there was possibility that they were trying to communicate, but he couldn't understand or couldn't determine how he could communicate back.
Okay.
So there was. Now, as far as the craft goes, the conclusion, and this goes, one of the civilian witnesses, somebody from one of the towns close by that saw this thing fly, said it was, wasn't any kind of a missile or rocket. That this guy had apparently been a rocketeer in the British Army or Air Force, and said this thing was flying around like somebody was driving it. And so, it's intelligently controlled craft.
Okay. So there was a couple witnesses. Now, the hypnosis part I think is a key to the fact that they were interviewed, then they were put under hypnosis to see if more came out, correct?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
And did the interview part, do you remember, did they talk about an interaction and then they backed it up with actually going under hypnosis, or did they just give a general summary of what they saw, and then after going under, then the hypnosis brought more of this out?
I believe one of them mentioned that missing time. He can't remember. He was in one place and he woke up and he was in another place, and so they realized something might have happened. So they put him under hypnosis just to determine whether there's something in a hidden mind, in his mind that he's hiding, and that's why they did the hypnotic interview.
Okay. Now, these different cases, some that you said we're not aware of that happened, did every one of these cases, for the most part, have to do with some kind of interaction with nuclear weapons?
Some of them did, and some of them didn't. It had to do with sensitive areas, such as the Nevada test site. One happened out there that was prominent, and Linda knows about this because she has some secret source tell her about it. But something happened out at the Nevada test site many years ago that was photographed, and it didn't have anything to do with nuclear testing was occurring out there, but not actually. They weren't storing the nuclear weapons there. They were storing up at Nellis Air Force Base.
Okay, did the report that you saw about Bentwaters say there was any kind of issues with the ordnance that were stored there at Bentwaters?
Yes, there was a whole analysis. They were interviewed I can't remember it was the nuclear weapons officer or commander or something to that effect, asking them to check all the nuclear weapons. They did. He didn't find any problems with any of the nuclear weapons. He didn't find any problems with any of the igloos. So that was mentioned in the report, but there was no tampering. I know I've read and I saw things on the internet about them supposedly tampering with nuclear weapons. There have been incidents that happened like that, but not that I know of in Bentwaters, at least not listed in the report.
Okay, a couple more minutes left. 2 questions. The first one is, what is your summary based on your report and the Kirkland incident of what possibly we were dealing with? And last but not least, and I know I'm giving not much time to do it, over the years you were involved in counterintelligence and disinformation. Why have you come forward now with this report? And is it still classified? And if it is, could you get in trouble for even discussing it?
Well, first of all, I came forth before. This isn't the first time I've talked about this report. I've talked about it at a UFO convention some years ago. I talked about it with Art Bell. So it's not the first time I've talked about it. Okay. It's the first time that I've done it in details. A lot of people didn't want to hear about it. And then, of course, my reputation is supposedly the disinformation person, which is absolutely wrong. And I don't care. I mean, I don't let anybody bother me as far as my reputation. No, I know the truth. I know what happened, and I'm gonna state the truth and what happened. One of the things I want to talk about is Wendell Stevens in one of the UFO conventions. I can't remember what year it was, 2000, whenever. He called me to his room, and he used to do this all the time. I had a pretty good working relationship with Wendell. He showed me this the OSI report. It wasn't the full report. It's about 40 pages, but it was heavily redacted. But he showed it to me. He said, do you recognize this? And I started reading it. And what I could see out of it, and I thought, wow, this looks just like the report. It's not this thick because he only had like 40 pages or so. I said, where'd you get this? He said, from a source. And Wendell would always do that. Wendell, and I know Linda knows Wendell. I know Linda knows him well. So he had a lot of things that he got that I don't know where he gets it from, where he got it from, but he actually had it. And I talked to Art Bell in great length about this, but not in any details. So this isn't the first time I brought it up. I would guess that the report is still highly classified, and that's why they're not releasing it. I've tried to get it myself several times. I asked Bill Moore to get it for me. I tried to get it. I called one of the people I know within OSI FOIA, and he just said, Rick, if they don't want you to have it, they're not going to send it to you.
Okay, based on your analysis of Kirkland and Bentwaters, especially, obviously you didn't investigate fully Bentwaters, you just looked at the report. What could we possibly be dealing with here?
Oh, extraterrestrial visitation. These crafts defy our physics. They defy our logic. You can't. Some of these things that these crafts do, we can't replicate it. We don't have an aircraft out there that replicate what they can do, and so it's my impression that, yeah, we are. we are being visited. I know that, and by advanced civilization, and this is the proof of it.
Okay, now the interesting thing that I'm curious about as we close down the show, and I want to take the time to thank you for coming on and talking about this tonight, is that the OSI team from Bentwaters, what was their conclusion based on, you said you talked to them after the fact, what did they feel was going on?
Well, I talked to the case agent 7 years ago, and he was thoroughly convinced it was an extraterrestrial craft. It was an actual landing of an extraterrestrial craft, and that the government knows about it, and they're afraid to release the information. They're afraid to let the public know.
Why? Why are they afraid?
I don't know. I can guess that they're afraid because they kept it silent from 1947 on, and now it's going to be pretty embarrassing for them to say, you know what, Roswell really happened, this really happened, all these things really happened, we're being visited, and we don't know by who, and they have advanced technologies, and you can imagine what the citizens would then do. Oh my God, they're going to invade us. It's going to be an invasion from Mars again.
No,
they just don't go to the public.
Not in 2017. We're way past that.
Well, Rick, I'm afraid we're out of time. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of chatter about this interview, and we want to appreciate the fact that you've come on tonight and been open about what you saw and what's going on. And hopefully maybe sometime in the future, after this gets around and stuff, maybe we can have you back and talk about some other cases and some other things.
Yes.
Sure. Yes, absolutely. I'd enjoy that.
I've got
Thank you very much.
Fort Belvoir with a trilateral insignia that we need to talk about. Thank you.
And happy Thanksgiving to you. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Rick, and all our listeners.
Thank you. Thank you. Same to you.
Thanks. Race, take us to next week.
You got it, John. Man, it's great to hear your voice back on the radio again, my brother. Next week on Phenomenon Radio, guess what? We're going to be off. We're going to be eating turkey and celebrating Thanksgiving holiday with our families. For John Burroughs, for Linda Moulton Howe, for our very special and honored guest, Richard Doty, thank you all for listening tonight. Stay tuned for 3 hours of Jimmy Church and Fade to Black Live right here on your contact for the best paranormal talk radio topics on the World Wide Web. You're listening to KGRAradio.com. Have a great night and a great Thanksgiving holiday, everyone.